To begin, hello everybody. It's my most recent booktube video and Olympia's recommendation. I gotta do this fast because this is gonna last about 5 seconds. Her recommendation, she gives her highest paws up to Joyce Carol Oates' Naughty Cherie, artwork by Mark Graham. Read it. You'll love it. Read all of Joyce Carol Oates. Um, Joyce Carol Oates has written a few children's books as well as many other kinds of books. And the wonderful thing about this is finally after decades, more decades than I care to admit, I have some signed books by Joyce Carol Oates. I was in contact with her via Twitter in the last few weeks and was able to get some signed books for her. I'm going to show. I'm also going to talk about some new books I've bought, a couple of books from the library, and some first editions that I'm very excited about, and Oates' name will come up again. And this was signed. I'll show it, and I mean literally, this is like almost 40 years of being a Joyce Carol Oates fan, and finally, and it's signed by Cherie as well, who is her who is her cat, one of her cats. And of course, this was really written by Cherie. It's got Joyce Carol Oates' name on it to sell the book, but it was kitty written by Cherie. Also, I'm very excited about the first book that I read by Joyce Carol Oates was in 1979 or 80, and it was Belle Fleur. Wonderful, huge family saga, gothic, just a really fantastic book that just begs for like an ongoing or limited series on television now that they're doing these wonderful adaptations of serious books. This would be fantastic, but this is and it's not in the greatest shape in the world. I bought it new. This is from Book of the Month Club in 79 or 80, and I've had it all these years, and I always thought Oates came to my town to speak in I was at university, and this was 1989, and she wasn't doing a signing. Probably if I had brought some books with me, she probably would have been happy to sign them, but I was I literally sat behind her and her late husband, Raymond Smith, and I was just too shy, like to speak up. But to my knowledge, she has not been back here or in this general region since then. So I wish no book signings, no way to get things signed. But I always thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could get my original copy of Belle Fleur signed by Oates? I asked her if we could do this, if I could send it to her to be signed. She said yes, and there it is. You probably can't see it. It says, "For Gare, with warmest best wishes, Joyce Carol Oates, June 15th, 2018. So, and this is really, really special for me to finally get this signed. And I highly recommend Belle Fleur as well if you haven't read it. She also very kindly sent me a signed, this is like a postcard that has a portrait of her on it, and she signed the back of this. For Gare, Joyce Carol, with regards, Joyce, June 15, 2018. These were all sent together. So I'm going to frame this and put it up in my room. And she also sent me, and this was a surprise. This is a publication. It's one story. It's just a single story of hers that came out in this little pamphlet, and this is part of a series of authors who are putting out these one story pamphlets, and this is her story, The Woman in the Window. For Gare, best wishes, June 15th, 2018. And Woman in the Window is from her most recent story collection, which I think I showed it in an earlier video, and of course I didn't bring it out with me, but I have shown it before, and I recommend all of Joyce Carol Oates' books. You know, if you are already a fan of Oates, you know what I'm talking about. If you are discovering her for the first time, taking that leap, then I'm envious of you. You know, I really am. I'm also very, very excited, and thank you, Joyce Carol Oates, for signing those books for me and being so kind. I really appreciate it. And also, my dear friend Ann Rice sent me, this is an advance copy of her next Vampire Chronicles book, Blood Communion, and A Tale of Prince Lestat, The Vampire Chronicles. And this is coming out October the 2nd, I believe. And this is an early advance copy. This is not the you know, the final copy. This is a little bit shorter than most of her books. She has written some shorter novels in the past. This is about 257 pages. I don't know. It may be about that whenever the finished book comes out. And again, from Anne Rice for Gary Swafford. And then she does a more lengthy, for my beloved Gary, Anne Rice, and I love you, and love to Olympia. Olympia, of course, being my new kitty that you met at the beginning of the video. Is truly a live wire. God knows where she is or what she's doing. So Blood Communion. What can I say about it? It's probably one of my favorite books in the series. One of my favorite of the more recent books. What I really love about this, and luckily I was able to read this in manuscript when she sent it to me late last summer or early fall. And what I really love is that it's the vampires, and they are all together, and they're in this incredible adventure together, and I just really love it. You know, they're all there. Gabrielle's there, Lestat, Louis, they're all there, and they're having just this really kind of breathtaking adventure, and I think you're really going to love it. I highly recommend Blood Communion, and I'll be keeping you posted on this as developments. Okay, what are we going to show next? In an earlier video, I mentioned to you the author I like very much, Glen David Gold, who wrote the novels. He's only written 2 novels, but what novels they are: Carter Beats the Devil and Sunnyside. Carter Beats the Devil came out, I think, in 2001 or 2002. Sunnyside came out in 2011. So if you're a fan of Glen David Gold, you've got to be patient, but it's always worth the wait. I got a galley copy of this a few months ago of his memoir, I Will Be Complete, and this is the book. It's out now. It's been out for a few weeks. This is my copy, and it's just really a marvelous memoir. It takes off from basically Gold being abandoned by his mother when he was about 11, 12 years old. He was in San Francisco, and he was a very intelligent, very precocious boy, but he was basically, his parents were divorced. His mother takes off to New York City and leaves him thinking, you know, that he's got what he needs, he's going to be fine, and he's not so fine. But it's not a downer. I wouldn't call it a downer book. It's kind of everything. It is moving. It is funny. There are parts of it that are just absolutely hilarious, laugh out loud hilarious. And there are parts of it that will really just kind of stop you in your tracks and just make you think a while. So highly recommend Glen David Gold memoir. I Will Be Complete. Bestseller right now. So absolutely check that out. I wonder how many of you um, have read the Italian author Italo Calvino's book. This is a library edition, and I know I'm going to end up getting my own copy. If on a winter's night, a traveler. This is one of those books. Maybe you're like me in that there are certain authors, certain books that you haven't read before, and you've always meant to read them, but they've been kind of on the back burner for, well, in this case, decades. I meant to read him many, many, many years ago and didn't quite get to it. For some reason, I stumbled on him recently, and I'm like, I think it's time for me to read Calvino or look into it. And this one, the idea of it always intrigued me. It's a novel, but it's also a novel about reading the novel. So it's kind of about you, the reader, woven into this narrative. There's 22 chapters in the book. One part of each chapter is about the reader. The other part is the narrative of the book, and they sort of intertwine. And I'm really enjoying it. I don't know why I waited so long to read him. And actually, I have read him before. I forgot. I read Invisible Cities, and I don't know why I forgot that because I like that book very much. But the second book that I've read by him. So, and I'm still very early on, but I know I'm going to love it, and I will be looking for my own, hopefully a first edition, and I don't know if it's possible to get a signed copy of it, but you know me, I will keep trying. Also on Oates, two first editions. I got a couple of really incredible first editions this week. Now, I had already a copy, because I'm a multi-edition collector. Those of you who watch me regular know that I want the hardcover, I want the paperback, if I can get the galley. I don't do audiobooks a whole lot. The various editions I want. I even have copies of some of Anne's books in other languages that I can't even read. But, maybe they've got beautiful covers. Maybe it's an old paperback that was published in France in the 80s, and, I'm just like, I've got to have it. And I have one of those, and I'm like, I've got to have it, And I just keep on until I get it. I already had Joyce Carol Oates' story collection, Last Days Stories, Joyce Carol Oates. This is from the earlier mid 80s, and this I didn't. This is not. Let me think. This is not a first edition, but this is. And as you can see, it's not. It wasn't a library copy. I got this at my local. I have a local thrift store here, secondhand shop, that I really love because they're a little bit more expensive than what you might think that they should be, but they only sell very good quality items, and their book section is just incredible. I know these are books that are mostly donated to them, but they have some very well read people who donate. This is first edition of Last Days, Joyce Carol Oates. I really love one of my favorite story collections. She's written many, many story collections over the years. She's had 2 this year alone, and Night Gaunts is the most recent story collection that just came out a couple of months ago. She had an earlier story collection earlier this year, and she's got a novel coming out later. So Joyce Carol Oates is incredibly productive, and happily so, if you're a fan. And I'm hoping to get one of these signed, and I also highly recommend this as well. This was, so I have the first edition of Last Days. The real shock for me was at the store that I'm speaking about. I got a first edition superb, and I've already had it. I have my books, the books that I really want to take very, very good care of. I have jackets put on them. So I just think it preserves the book. I don't have them like taped in or anything like that because I don't want it to do damage to the book. They're just in there. They just fit in there kind of like an envelope. And there is a local, it's kind of like a craft shop, technical, they make copies of things, and they sell office equipment, things like that, and they will bind your books for a very small charge. But anyway, it's a first edition copy of Truman Capote's classic novel, In Cold Blood. It's it's got a little wear and tear, slight wear and tear at the edges, but not really. It's not marked up. It's not dog-eared. It's not yellowed. It's as if someone bought this and just put it back, and it sat there for 50-something years and ended up, this was published in 1966 to great acclaim. And what was shocking to me that this was in the $2 section. And I was just like, why? Because it's just, even though it's like a second-hand shop, they do have some books there that are first editions, and they've got a higher price on them. They're not expensive at all. They're anywhere from $15 to $30. I think Olympia's coming back, and I just went to the lady who was over the shop at the time, and I said, you've got this book on the $2 shelf, and this is a first edition of In Cold Blood. She obviously had no idea what I was speaking of, and I said, well, I didn't feel right paying $2 for this because, you can see this on eBay for, varying prices depending on the condition, but I've seen it for $400. I looked at the other day, and there was a copy for sale that looked like it was maybe not in this good a shape, $400. And I said, I just don't feel right taking this. I hope I don't have to pay $400, but I don't feel right getting this for $2. And this was obviously something she had no clue about. So I kind of know the manager there a little bit and spoke to her about this. And I said, I'd love to have this, but $2. What's going on? And she was just kind of like, she says, if you want it, it's marked $2, So I'm kind of like, well, I'm not going to stand here and argue with you or anything, So I paid the $2, and I made an extra donation to the store, so I don't feel completely bad, But In Cold Blood, first edition, pretty much pristine shape, and very happy to have it. Wonderful book. I don't know if it was worth it, what writing it did to Truman Capote. We're familiar with those stories now, via the movies that were made about him and all the pieces that have come about the writing of that book over the years. But, superb book. Also at the library this week, I picked up 2 books. One of them, big fan of the writing of the playwright Tennessee Williams. I've read all of his plays, seen the movies, seen some of the plays performed in person, read his memoirs, which are wonderful. If you get a chance to read Tennessee Williams' memoirs, by all means do so. There's a huge collection of his journals. It's a very big book that's wonderful to read. This is a collection of letters that he wrote with a friend named James Laughlin. I'm not familiar with Laughlin. I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's someone who's still living. And it's called The Luck of Friendship, edited by Peggy L. Fox and Thomas Keith. And looks like it was a epistolary friendship over many years. Tennessee Williams, everything he wrote is wonderful. Whether it's his journal, whether it's his plays, whether it's his stories. I'm not as big a fan of his poetry, but You know, the letters are, there's been various books of his letters published, and so I'm very eager to take a look at this. Also, I wonder how many of you are following this about Slyvia Plath and her letters. There are 2 books being published of her letters. This is the letters of Slyvia Plath. As you can see, this is a mammoth book. It's volume 1, and this came out a few months ago. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was actually late last year. And I had actually read some reviews of it that were less than enthusiastic in saying there were bits here that were interesting, but basically it was early. It's pre-Ted Hughes marriage, you know, poetry collection publication, pre her moving, about the end of it, she's probably moving to England, meeting Hughes, getting married. This goes to 1956, and then there's going to be the next volume covering the rest of her life, which was from 56 to 63, which was when she committed suicide. And of course, I imagine the second book is going to be more interesting. But I'm actually, you know, I've only read part of this, and I like it very much. I don't expect every page of 1,000 plus. How many pages is this? Book to, you know, to be scintillating, but, you know, I think the journey of great writers is very fascinating. It's always been fascinating to me. I'm a big reader of writer memoirs, writer biographies, writer letters, writer journals. It is 1,330 pages. It's a doorstopper. And I would recommend this. If you're interested, we're learning more and more and more. 55 years after her suicide, we are still learning things about Slyvia Plath, one of the great poets, in my opinion. And we're still learning about her fascinating book. So, first edition, Slyvia Plath, Tennessee Williams, Calvino, Joyce Carol Oates, Glen David Gold, my beloved friend Anne Rice, all wonderful books. Cherie, Joyce Carol Oates' cat, who's also an author. And highly recommend Naughty Cherie by Cherie Carol Oates. So, let me know what you think about the books. Are you coming to say goodbye? Are you going to come say goodbye to everybody? Your timing is impeccable, my darling. Your timing is just so impeccable. You're here at the beginning, you're here at the end. And happy news, because I think I mentioned that she lost one of her eyebrow whiskers. And she's got this one. She lost the one over here. And you're not going to be able to see it, and I know you won't. But it's like starting one to grow back. So I don't know. I haven't had a kitten in about 20 years. All my cats were very old. So, and I've never had a cat like this before. She wears me out. She's so energetic, but she knows Daddy adores her. So I don't know if maybe sometimes their eyebrow whiskers fall out. We've got to go to the vet because she's having some tummy issues. Not anything major. I think maybe it's time to get her off the kitten science diet onto a more regular diet. So anyway, let me know what you're reading. Goodbye, Olympia. And, let me know what you're reading. Let me know what you think about the books and what you're excited to read right now. I hope everyone's having a great summer. Keeping cool. Enjoy it while it lasts. And take care, guys.